I never believed places could feel wrong the second you saw them. Not until cabin 12. I booked it 3 winters ago after my divorce. I wanted silence, no traffic, no neighbors, no phone calls from people pretending to care how I was holding up. Just snow, trees, and 2 nights completely alone. The rental listing described it as a peaceful hunter's cabin tucked deep in the Montana wilderness. What it should have said was, if you hear knocking after midnight, don't answer. I arrived just before sunset. The road leading there was barely visible beneath the snow. Pine trees crowded both sides like walls, blocking out the sky. My GPS stopped working almost an hour earlier, and the only reason I found the place was because someone had nailed rusted metal signs to random trees that simply said, Cabin 12. The cabin finally appeared through the fog. Small, old dark. 1 yellow porch light flickered weakly above the front steps. That was it. No nearby houses, no cars, no sounds except the wind moving through the trees. A heavy-set older man stepped out from a shed beside the cabin, wearing a thick hunting jacket and carrying a lantern. You Ethan? He asked. Yeah. He nodded slowly, like he already knew something about me. Name's Walter. I maintain the property. He handed me a key attached to a faded wooden tag with the number 12 burned into it. You're the only renter out here this week, he said. Perfect. He didn't smile. Instead, he glanced toward the woods behind the cabin. Then he said something strange. If you hear knocking at night, ignore it. I laughed a little. Thought he was joking. He wasn't. I'm serious, he said quietly. Don't open the door after midnight. The wind picked up hard enough to shake the trees. I stared at him. What kind of knocking? But Walter was already backing away. Generators out back. Keep fuel in it if the storm gets worse. Then he climbed into an old truck and drove off down the snowy road without another word, leaving me completely alone. The inside of the cabin smelled like dust and wet wood. There was a fireplace, an old couch, tiny kitchen, and 1 bedroom in the back. The place looked untouched since the early 90s. No internet, no signal, no TV. Exactly what I wanted. At first, I made coffee, unpacked my bags, and spent a few hours reading beside the fireplace while snow slammed against the windows outside. By midnight, the storm had become brutal. The cabin creaked constantly. Branches scraped across the roof. And every few minutes, I'd catch myself staring at the dark windows, feeling like someone was standing just beyond the glass, watching. Around 2:00 a.m., I finally went to bed. I remember checking my phone before sleeping. 2:12 a.m. 1 minute later, knock. I froze. The sound came from outside the cabin, not the door, the wall beside the bedroom. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I sat upright instantly. At first I thought maybe a branch hit the side of the cabin. Then it happened again. Closer this time. Knock, knock, knock. Deliberate. Human. Every hair on my arms stood up. I grabbed the flashlight beside the bed and moved toward the window. Outside was nothing except swirling snow and darkness. But then I noticed footprints. Fresh footprints circling the cabin. I stared, confused. There shouldn't have been anyone out there for miles. I scanned the trees with the flashlight beam. Nothing. Then another knock exploded against the wall directly beneath the window. I jumped backward. Something was standing right outside. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. The knocking stopped after that. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. I barely slept the rest of the night. At sunrise, I forced myself outside to check the tracks. The snow reached almost to my knees. I followed the footprints around the cabin carefully. They circled it several times. Whoever made them had walked slowly, like they were inspecting the place. But the worst part, the tracks stopped directly beneath my bedroom window. Not continued, stopped, as if whoever stood there simply vanished. I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe another hunter, maybe Walter screwing with renters. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. That second night was worse. The storm knocked out the generator around midnight. The entire cabin went black instantly. No lights, no heat, nothing. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside to refuel the generator. The woods looked endless. Snow drifted through the trees sideways in the wind, and for a second, I thought I saw someone standing between the pines, tall, still. Watching me, I pointed the flashlight toward it. Nothing there. I restarted the generator and hurried back inside. Then I noticed something beside the front door, scratches, long deep claw marks carved into the wood. My stomach dropped. I locked the deadbolt immediately. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the knocking returned. This time at the front door. Knock, 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 slow, patient, like whoever stood outside knew I was there. I didn't move. Another 3 knocks echoed through the cabin. Then came footsteps, crunching slowly through the snow around the house, circling me. The flashlight trembled in my hands. I looked through the front window carefully. At first I saw only darkness, then a face appeared inches from the glass. Pale skin, sunken eyes, a huge unnatural smile stretched across its face. I stumbled backward so hard I fell onto the floor. The thing outside tilted its head slowly, still smiling. Then it whispered something. My name. Ethan. I stopped breathing. There was no possible way that thing should know my name. The knocking became violent suddenly. Bang, bang, bang. The entire door shook. I grabbed the shotgun mounted above the fireplace and pointed it toward the entrance, while the creature laughed softly outside. Not normal laughter. Wet, broken, almost choking. Then silence. Complete silence. A few seconds later, screep. Something sharp dragged slowly across the outside wall, moving around the cabin, searching. I stayed frozen for almost an hour. Then I heard the bedroom window slide open. I spun around. Cold air flooded into the cabin. The window was open halfway, and muddy footprints now covered the bedroom floor. Something had gotten inside. I ran, didn't grab my bags, didn't grab food. I sprinted through the back door into the storm while hearing footsteps moving behind me inside the cabin. Fast footsteps. I reached my truck and jammed the keys into the ignition. Nothing. The engine wouldn't start. Behind me, the cabin door creaked open slowly. A dark figure stepped onto the porch. Tall. Too tall. Its smile visible even through the snow. The truck finally roared to life. I slammed the gas and fishtailed down the mountain road while the figure remained standing there, watching me leave. I reached the nearest town just after sunrise and went straight to a gas station. The cashier looked half asleep until I mentioned cabin 12. Then his expression changed immediately. Where exactly? He asked. I told him. The man went completely pale. That cabin burned down in 1998, he whispered. I laughed nervously. No, it didn't. I was just there. He shook his head slowly. 3 people died there during a storm. Owner, too. He pointed toward an old newspaper clipping hanging beside the register, and there it was. A photo of cabin 12 completely destroyed by fire. 28 years earlier. Same porch, same windows, same cabin. I stared at the picture in silence. Then I noticed something standing in the background between the trees. Tall, pale, smiling. Exactly where I saw it 2 nights before. My girlfriend Leah loved isolated places, cabins, empty lakes, quiet forests. She said, silence helped her reset. I used to think that sounded peaceful. Now I hear silence differently. Now silence feels like a warning. We rented the cabin in northern Minnesota during January, right after a massive snowstorm hit the area. The listing looked perfect. Small wooden cabin beside a frozen lake, no nearby neighbors. Fireplace, private hiking trails. Leah booked it immediately. We need this, she told me. At the time, I agreed. The drive there took almost 6 hours. The deeper we went into the woods, the less traffic we saw until eventually there were no cars at all. Just endless trees. The cabin finally appeared near sunset, beside a completely frozen lake covered in drifting snow. It looked beautiful, too beautiful. The kind of place that feels fake when you first see it. Smoke drifted from the chimney even though nobody should have been there. A middle-aged man wearing a heavy winter coat stepped onto the porch as we parked. You must be Daniel and Leah, he said. His smile seemed forced. I'm the owner, Richard. He helped us bring our bags inside while explaining how the generator worked and warning us the power sometimes cut out during storms. Then he pointed toward a wooden door near the kitchen floor. The basement entrance. It had a thick chain wrapped around it. You don't need to go down there, he said quickly. I laughed awkwardly. What's down there? Storage. That was it. No explanation. Leah noticed it too. The second Richard left, she whispered. That guy was weird. I nodded. The cabin itself was warm but strangely outdated. Old furniture, old photographs, a dusty radio sitting near the fireplace. Everything felt frozen in time. That first night actually felt normal. We cooked dinner, played cards. I drank wine beside the fire while snow buried the woods outside. By midnight, the storm became violent. Wind slammed against the cabin hard enough to shake the windows. That's when Leah heard it. "Did you hear that?" I looked up. "Hear what?" She stared toward the floor. "Someone talking." I listened carefully. Nothing. Then, very faintly, a voice, muffled, like someone speaking underneath us. I stood up slowly. The sound disappeared instantly. "You're imagining it," I told her. But honestly, I wasn't sure. At around 2 a.m. we went to bed. I woke sometime later to static, loud static. I opened my eyes and saw pale light glowing from the living room. The old radio beside the fireplace was on, by itself. I walked into the room half asleep. The radio blasted white noise through the cabin. I reached toward the dial. Then a voice suddenly cut through the static. "Don't let them downstairs." I froze. The voice sounded terrified, male, weak. Then screaming erupted through the speaker. Real screaming, agonized, panicked, like someone being tortured. Leah came running from the bedroom. "What the hell is that?" The radio crackled violently. Then another voice whispered, "They're still here." The power instantly died. Everything went black. The radio shut off, and the cabin became completely silent. Neither of us slept after that. The next morning, I checked the radio carefully. It wasn't plugged in. Actually, it couldn't be plugged in. The cord had been cut off completely. Leah wanted to leave immediately. I should have listened. Instead, I convinced both of us there had to be some explanation. Maybe battery power. Maybe crossed frequencies. Maybe someone nearby messing with us. But there were no nearby houses, no signal, nothing. That afternoon, Leah noticed scratches around the chained basement door. Deep scratches, like someone had clawed at the wood trying to get out. That night the radio turned on again. Same static, same screaming. But this time, the voice knew our names. "Daniel," static crackled. "Leah," we stared at each other in horror. Then the voice whispered, "He knows you're upstairs." The basement door suddenly rattled violently beneath the chain. Bang! Leah screamed. Bang, bang, bang! Something was hitting the basement door from underneath. Hard. The chain stretched with every impact. I grabbed the fireplace poker while Leah backed toward the bedroom crying. Then everything stopped. Silence again. I moved slowly toward the basement door and heard breathing underneath it. Heavy breathing. Right below my feet. I should left right then. Instead, I unlocked the chain. The smell hit immediately. Rot, wet wood, something foul underneath the cabin. Leah begged me not to go down there, but I grabbed a flashlight and opened the basement door anyway. The stairs creaked beneath my weight. The basement looked enormous compared to the cabin above. Dust covered everything. Old furniture, rusty tools, water stains across concrete walls, and sitting in the center of the basement floor, the radio, still playing static, even though it wasn't connected to anything. I walked toward it carefully. Then my flashlight beam caught something on the wall. Scratches, hundreds of scratches, and written over them repeatedly in black paint. "Don't fall asleep." My stomach twisted. Leah suddenly screamed upstairs. I ran toward the staircase. Slam. The basement door crashed shut above me. Complete darkness swallowed the room. "Leah?" No answer. Only static from the radio. Then footsteps, moving somewhere in the basement. Slow, dragging footsteps. I pointed the flashlight wildly through the darkness. Nothing there. Then the radio spoke again, this time clearly. "He's behind you." I spun around. A man stood at the far side of the basement, tall, thin, wearing filthy winter clothes. His face looked wrong somehow. Too pale, too stretched. He smiled slowly. Then all the lights upstairs turned on at once. I heard Leah screaming again. I bolted for the stairs and threw the basement door open. The cabin upstairs was destroyed, furniture overturned, glass shattered, front door hanging open. But Leah was gone. I screamed her name while running into the snow outside. No footprints, no tracks, nothing, like she'd vanished. Then I noticed something near the frozen lake. A trail. Not footprints, drag marks. Leading across the ice toward the woods. I followed them with the flashlight shaking in my hands. The storm howled around me so loudly I almost missed the whisper behind me. "Daniel!" I turned. The pale man stood beside the cabin, smiling. And beside him, Leah, except something was wrong with her face. Her smile stretched too wide. Her eyes looked empty. Then both of them slowly walked back toward the cabin together. I ran. I don't even remember reaching the truck. I just remember driving through the storm while Leah's screams echoed in my head. Police searched the area 2 days later. They found the cabin empty, no owner, no basement, no radio, nothing. The property records showed the cabin had been abandoned for over 20 years after multiple disappearances connected to the area. Leah was never found. But sometimes late at night, I still hear static coming through my phone speaker, and every single time, a voice whispers from the noise, "She's still downstairs." Dotrolagt. I moved into the cabin because I wanted to be alone. After my first novel failed, I convinced myself isolation would help me write again. No distractions, no internet, no people. Just me in the woods for 3 months. The cabin sat deep in the forests of northern Oregon, nearly 30 miles from the nearest town. Tiny, 1 bedroom, wood stove, crawl space underneath instead of a basement. The owner gave me one warning before leaving. "Animals get underneath sometimes," he said. "You'll hear scratching at night." At the time, I didn't think much about it. I should have. The first few days were peaceful. I woke early, made coffee, wrote for hours beside the window while snow drifted through the trees outside. It felt perfect, until the food started disappearing. At first, it was small things. A missing apple, half a loaf of bread gone, an opened can of soup I didn't remember touching. I blamed it myself. Maybe I was tired, distracted, but then I started noticing other things. The kitchen chair moved overnight. Cabinets slightly open. The front door unlocked in the morning, even though I clearly remembered locking it. Every night around 3 a.m., I heard movement underneath the cabin, slow crawling sounds, wood creaking beneath the floorboards. I kept telling myself it was raccoons, until I heard coughing, human coughing, directly beneath my bedroom floor. I sat frozen in bed listening. Then came whispering, too muffled to understand. My stomach tightened. I grabbed a flashlight and checked every room in the cabin, nothing. But when I reached the kitchen, I noticed the crawl space hatch near the pantry floor. It was slightly open. I knew I'd closed it earlier. The darkness beneath it looked endless. I slammed it shut immediately and pushed a heavy table over it. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, muddy footprints covered the kitchen floor. Bare human footprints, leading from the crawl space hatch to the refrigerator, then back again. I almost packed my things right there, but some stupid part of me wanted proof first. I drove into town and bought motion cameras from a hunting supply store. That night, I placed one facing the kitchen and another outside near the cabin foundation. At 2:47 a.m., the sound woke me again. Creaking beneath the floor, slow movement, then silence. I stayed in bed gripping a baseball bat until sunrise. The moment daylight hit the windows, I checked the camera footage. At first, everything looked normal. Empty kitchen, dark cabin, nothing moving. Then at 2:51 a.m., the crawl space hatch slowly lifted open. A pale hand reached out from underneath. My entire body went cold. A man crawled into the kitchen, thin, filthy, completely barefoot. His beard hung in tangled clumps across his chest. His eyes looked sunken and grey. He moved strangely, too quiet, too practiced, like he'd done this many times before. I watched in horror as he opened my refrigerator calmly and started eating leftover meat with his bare hands. Then he stopped, suddenly. His head turned slowly toward the camera, toward me, and he smiled. Not normal, wide, empty, like he was happy. I finally knew he existed. The footage ended seconds later. I drove straight to the sheriff's office in town, but the deputy barely seemed interested. "You're probably dealing with a drifter," he said. "Happens sometimes in remote areas." "Happens sometimes?" I asked. The deputy shrugged. "People hide in vacation cabins during winter." I stared at him. So what am I supposed to do? Lock the hatch. That was it. No officer sent back with me. No investigation. Just lock the hatch. I bought heavy chains and a padlock before driving back. But the entire trip, I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. The man had looked directly into the camera, like he knew exactly where I was sleeping. I locked the crawl space hatch tightly that evening. Then I pushed the kitchen table over it again. For the first few hours, everything stayed quiet. Outside, snow buried the forest and beneath a growing blizzard. The power flickered constantly. By midnight, the storm became violent enough to shake the entire cabin. Then the lights died completely. Darkness swallowed everything. A few seconds later, thunk, Something hit the underside of the floor. Then another. Thunk, thunk. The table over the crawl space hatch shifted slightly. I backed away slowly, holding the baseball bat. The hatch rattled beneath the chains. Something underneath was pulling on it. Hard. Then came a voice. Please, a man's voice. Weak, trembling. Let me out. I didn't answer. The voice started crying softly underneath the floor. You locked me down here. The hatch suddenly exploded upward hard enough to crack the wood around it. The chains held, barely, then silence again. I stood frozen for several minutes. That's when I heard footsteps, inside the cabin, not below it, inside. My blood turned to ice. I turned slowly toward the hallway leading to the bedroom. A shadow moved across the darkness. Someone was already upstairs. The man underneath the cabin wasn't alone. I ran for the shotgun mounted beside the fireplace. The moment I grabbed it, laughter echoed from the hallway. Quiet laughter. Childlike. Then another voice whispered from the bedroom. He sees you now. The bedroom door slowly creaked open. I pointed the shotgun toward the darkness. Nothing visible, but I could hear breathing. Heavy breathing. The storm outside grew louder. Wind hammered against the cabin while footsteps moved around me in circles. Then the kitchen table suddenly slid across the floor by itself. The crawl space hatch burst open, and the pale man crawled out, fast, faster than any person should move. He lunged toward me screaming. I fired once. The blast deafened me inside the cabin. The man collapsed backward into the darkness. I didn't wait to see if he was dead. I ran straight through the front door, barefoot, into the blizzard. Snow sliced across my face while I sprinted blindly through the woods. Behind me, I heard the cabin door open slowly, then footsteps crunching through the snow, following me. I reached the road nearly an hour later, half frozen, and flagged down a passing snowplow truck. Police finally searched the cabin the next day. They found the crawl space. Inside it was a hidden living area, blankets, rotten food, empty cans, photos, hundreds of photos. Most were pictures of me, sleeping, writing, cooking. Some had been taken through the bedroom window at night. But the worst part? Police only found one set of footprints leaving the cabin after the shooting. Mine. No blood, no body, no second person. Nothing. The sheriff eventually told me they believed stress and isolation caused hallucinations. But they couldn't explain the photographs, or the recordings from my camera, or what I saw months later. Because 3 months after I escaped, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a single photograph of me sleeping in my new apartment, taken through my bedroom window, and written across the back in shaky handwriting were 5 words. I still live beneath you.